Welcome to the Sanity Project podcast, where you can awaken your mind to clarity and success even in today's life challenges. We're here to provide insights and solutions that will help you live a sane, healthy, and prosperous life. Here's your host, Joanne Victoria.
Hello, everybody. This is Joanne Victoria with another amazing episode of the Sanity Project podcast. You are here to discover a life of clarity, confidence, sanity, and entrepreneurial success. Our guest today is Jerry Fu. Jerry is a conflict resolution coach who helps Asian American leaders advance in their career and life journeys. Having taken on several pharmacy leadership roles, Jerry started coaching in 2017 to help other Asian American professionals deal with the conflict they encounter at work with their culture and within themselves. Today, Jerry offers a range of coaching services, which includes individual coaching, group workshops, and keynote presentations. Welcome to the show, Jerry Fu.
Hi, Joanne. Thanks for having me.
I'm thrilled to have you. I think it's just great what you're doing. And
Thank you.
Yes, so I know you're going to help us and help the listeners with how to resolve conflict in their work, culture, and self. But why don't you share with the audience how you got here? What made you become a pharmacist? What made you enhance your career by adding leadership, workshops, coaching, etc., to the Asian community?
Yeah, sure. So initially thought I'd be pre-med. After some other evaluation, like bad grades, I said, well, I still want to do healthcare. So I said, well, pharmacy is something still viable. And so convinced pharmacy school that I would make a good pharmacist and, started that career. The interesting thing is that even though I wanted to work for a chain pharmacy, because I wanted the security and stability of that, my mom thought a different chain pharmacy would be a better choice for me. And even though she's never worked a day in pharmacy in her life, mom knows best. So in my own conflict aversion up until this point, I just said, I don't have the energy to fight her insistence at this point. And so I went along with her recommendation, proceeded to quickly not like it and got complacent actually in the middle of my 5 years at this company, just because I actually had a decent work situation with flexible scheduling. And I said, I knew how rare that was to find. And so I got scared. And so I stayed there up until I transferred stores, and then it went away anyway. And then I was unhappy again. Mm-hmm. So after a really bad customer service incident back in January of 2010, I said, okay, I have to find something different. I have to get out there. But my options were fairly limited because I didn't work on my career at all, right? I was just happy coasting along, working for a chain. And so the only way I was able to get out of that was that a friend of mine who worked for a pharmacy consulting company here in Houston, I was living in Tennessee at the time. And I said, okay, she said, hey, my previous teaching position is available since I got promoted. Do you want to apply for it? I said, absolutely. And so I aced the interviews, convinced them I'm worth taking a chance on. And so next thing I know, I'm walking away from a full-time job with benefits to start a part-time teaching job with this company and with the chance to earn my way into a full-time position. Unfortunately, that never happened. 11 months later, I got fired. And so, it was just a really sobering moment that I didn't put in the work to really become a credible instructor. Like I wanted it. I thought I wanted it, but not enough to deal with the failures and mistakes that were piling up. And so instead of pushing through, I just lost a lot of confidence in myself and started to avoid the bigger challenges, which is not what any employer wants to see when they hire a new employee. And so,
right.
Again, averse to conflict, averse to challenges, beat myself up over failures instead of learning from them, growing from them. So that was a sobering lesson, that I didn't appreciate at the time. So that, though, was the mark of a sharp turn in my career roller coaster. I ended up next at a job, independent pharmacy, house of cards, where 4 of my paychecks bounced while I was filling for crooked doctors. So that was not a good situation. And even worse, I didn't know how to confront my boss. He was clearly ripping me off. And so I had a very misguided view of grace, right? I was like, well, let me honor my part, even if he doesn't honor his. And everyone's saying, Jerry, if he's not paying you, how do you expect to pay your bills? Like, why are you working for free? right? And so again, just some really hard truths I didn't want to admit about myself and didn't know how exactly to move forward with that. So thankfully, my friends get me out of that job with another company that is more legitimate, but can't pay me more than 8 hours a week. And so I move out to Austin temporarily to cover for the company store out there with no idea what my life was going to look like. And so that summer was when I had an interesting opportunity to help facilitate leadership workshops for a national leadership meeting run by a pharmacy leadership nonprofit that some of my friends are in charge of. And so teaching leadership gave me the confidence to believe that I could actually become a good leader. And so when a full-time manager position opened up in Houston later that fall, I said, I know I couldn't stay in Austin. It was a great work team, but I knew, number one, it wasn't home. And number two, I know I couldn't be afraid of I couldn't avoid these challenges any longer. So I take on the full-time position. I'm moving home, and I proceed to get written up the following year because I'm not keeping problematic technicians in line. Management was not happy with my leadership. And so again, just this overall theme of conflict aversion to difficult situations, holding people accountable. It was just a very humbling path. And so thankfully, after that company had its funding pulled, the only reason I got another job interview was now I had leadership experience on my resume. And so I tell people, leadership saved my career. And with that said, even though I had more job options, they also were very fleeting. They typically didn't last more than 1 or 2 years whenever I hopped to another company. And so when my previous company went under 4 years ago, I said, well, I'm tired of chasing insurances and fighting them and, chasing doctors for scripts, but I love teaching these leadership workshops. How do I make a career out of that? And so, again, still very scared of failure and rejection. And it took a pandemic for me to finally open up my own company because I said, I can't put this off any longer. So with that in mind, I had to niche down because there's plenty of leadership coaches out there. Right. And so I specifically focused on conflict, not necessarily because I chose it, but in a lot of ways it chose me between my personal and professional challenges. At one point I had to evict a roommate, and then I've had to fire, technicians, the whole mix together. Everyone around me said, Jerry, it's clearly conflict, which should be your specialty. So that is the path from pharmacist to conflict resolution coach.
That's an amazing journey. And I think every time you were fired, it was the right thing for those people to do for you to get you moving one step forward, each step at a time. Mm-hmm. Now, yeah. Is there a particular reason that you've chosen to help Asian American leaders?
Yeah. In coaching, what we say is that our ideal client is who we were 10 years ago. And in knowing just how conflict averse our culture is, there's a lot of unresolved resentment and frustration that just happen to be hiding beneath the surface. And, this is especially true for people, Asian Americans who are in their mid to late 20s or even early 30s, because what they grew up hearing from their parents isn't necessarily true anymore. And, so there's conflict, how they resolve conflict in their household doesn't necessarily work in the workplace, right? And then, how their parents define success is different from what they're seeing for a lot of people, right? And so that's why my heart goes out to them, because I know what kind of help I wish I had had when I was in my mid-20s, and I was just, angry and frustrated that life didn't work out the way I thought it should, or things weren't easier, didn't come easier to me, and then you realize the world doesn't owe you that. So now that you understand what the actual landscape looks like, how do you navigate it more effectively? And so that's why my heart goes out to them.
Yeah, that makes a great deal of sense. What you lived through is what you're able to teach others. Mm-hmm. And how to succeed beyond that expressed limitation of expectations. The expectations must be very high. I don't know. I'm just thinking while you're talking, which is not really bright, but
it's okay.
It's if your parents don't have any expectations of you, but judge you just the same, which I know a lot of people experience that. The person makes a choice and parents go, why did you do that? And then you're proud of yourself making a choice, but since it's your mommy and daddy, you tend to, or aunties or whoever else is in charge of your life at some point, you tend to retreat because they are criticizing you. And it's the criticism, I think, that is the key. The lack of support runs beyond the Asian American culture. Trust me on that. It's, I think it's beyond that, but this is who you are and what you are familiar with. And it's important that help is everywhere, and it's important that you have chosen a group of people to help. Yeah, I checked your website, and you've got some good stuff going there.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope that people are knocking on your door. So how can you help listeners resolve conflict in their work, culture, and self?
Yeah. So the framework that I have available on my website, there's a free guide you can download if you give an email address. It provides a simple framework. So that involves 5 steps. The first is to imagine what a successful conversation would sound like. Right. And the caveat with this, number one, well, there's 2 actually. One is that first that you have to, it gives you permission to believe that you can have a successful conversation, right? Because a lot of people just go in and charge ahead and they say, well, I don't know how this is going to turn out. It's like, no, go ahead and think about how you'd like this to go. Right. The second is just the fact that, success isn't necessarily restoring the relationship to 100%. Maybe success looks like a truce or a compromise, right? To say, okay, we can still be friends. Just please avoid, politics or religion when we talk, because, we just devolve into petty fighting when that happens, right? Other times, success means closure. You may have to fire someone. That may be a successful conversation, right? When I had to evict a roommate, success was convincing him to move out before I called the cops on him.
I was going to say, and pay back rent. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so first imagine what would be a successful conversation, right? The second is to find 10 seconds of courage to just set things in motion. And this is a key step because a lot of people wait until they feel like they're Superman or Wonder Woman in order to, start this conversation. But that may not happen for 3 or 6 months or even ever, right? And so the key with this is just to set things in motion and then lock the gate behind you so you can't backtrack. Right now, it's like, okay, 10 seconds of courage. Can I just find 10 seconds to pick up that phone, send that text, send that email? Yeah, I could do that. All right, let me just set this before, the other part of the protective side of me wants to change my mind and not initiate contact, right? The third step is to script your critical moves. So, don't just think, I'll figure it out on the fly. Go ahead and get your thoughts organized, right, on paper in a place where you can look at it objectively. Then you can organize the flow, make sure you cover everything you want, and make sure it goes in a logical progression. And then 4 is to rehearse these critical moves, right? You don't want to just memorize them for a test. It is, hey, you need to be able to know what you sound like, and your body language and your tone need to project confidence and composure when you are speaking. Right. You can record yourself on your phone. You can do role play with a friend, whatever it takes just to give yourself some muscle memory so that, train in the dojo before you fight on the street. And then number 5, just do it. Right. You've come too far. You've done the homework, and, tolerating this hasn't gotten you anywhere. Right. And hoping it'll fix itself on its own also hasn't gotten you anywhere. So, set things in motion, go in prepared, and your chances of success are higher.
Yes, I'm always telling people without a plan, they have nothing. Everybody needs a plan, whatever. I mean, this plan sounds perfect, and people who are listening can use it. They can go to your website and put in their name and email address and get the download. As I say, I checked, obviously. You're a guest, so I checked your website. And I think that's really important for people to have a plan. If you don't want to make your own plan, use Jerry's plan.
Absolutely.
It's free.
Yep.
It's based on all the work that he has done.
Yep.
And when I'm looking at, what did you say? Train in the dojo before you fight in the street?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So give me an example of one of your clients where you have worked with them.
Okay. Sure. So one example that follows this framework, which is actually what this framework was almost tailored to. One of my clients had a very difficult boss, a very temperamental boss. She would check in with him to make sure, she was managing a studio, and, she would ask, and, how am I doing? Is there anything I need to improve upon? And he would be very vague. Oh, yeah. Things are fine. But he wouldn't give specific metrics that would help, really define her efforts and clarify her efforts more clearly, so that she knew she could back up the fact that she was doing a good job because there were clear expectations. And so this guy was kind of passive aggressive. At one point, he called her after hours. She ignored the call because she was busy with other things. And the next day, he blew up at her and says, "I don't think you're that committed to this place. I don't think I see your heart." And she's like, where is this coming from, right? And she knew that this was just because she didn't answer at his beck and call. But, there's all sorts of managers, right, who want to hide behind passive aggressive behavior because they know that if they actually define standards that people could reach, then they wouldn't be able to, maintain that leverage of manipulation and shame, right? And so, my client comes to me and she goes, how do I handle this? How do I, get this resentment and frustration up, and the fact that I'm upset, to back down to normal without possibly antagonizing him further and possibly losing this job, which I can't afford to lose yet. And so, we sat down and, we talked through it. Hey, how do you want this conversation to go? Right. I need to address the fact that, expectations aren't clear. I need to, figure out how do I posture myself in such a way that shows that I respect his authority, even if I, frustrated in the moment. Right. One tip here is to frame the conversation and say, "Hey, look, I just want to be sure I'm the best employee that you need me to be, right? Can we have this conversation, right?" And well, yeah, of course. Who would say no to that? What boss would say no to saying, "Hey, an employee wants to be the best team player they can be"? Of course, you're going to have that discussion, right? And you can tie that back in. Hey, I'm trying to be the best I can, and yesterday you told me, in this way that I was not being the best. So what needs to change, right? And so, she wrote out specifically, what she needed to say. She rehearsed it in a mirror, right? And just making sure, hey, am I scared to say this, or am I going to be able to remind myself why I need to say these things? It's like, okay, then come across with more confidence. Then, she had the conversation. I got an email from her saying, "Hey, thank you for that. I don't know how I would have gotten through that without your help." I was just grateful that, she didn't lose her job over, a very, manipulative, angry situation.
Yeah, sometimes people want to lash out. We're in the situation that this woman was in. You just get so frustrated and pushed to the wall by ineffective leadership. People who should not be leaders. I mean, not everybody should own their own business. I mean, seriously, it's just not for everyone. Because when you own your own business, you have to respect your employees as well as your clients, but you have to respect your employees and speak clearly to them and commend them, which is rare. Especially I think this past year and a half-ish, that many people are quitting their jobs, starting their own, as you expanded your coaching practice during this whatever time we have. We've experienced, just weird stuff. And I hate to date my podcasts, but sometimes life enters. And, it's just, people have changed. Their desires and needs have changed, and they want, respect. They want remuneration, for work provided. They want a lot of things, and yet they're afraid to approach the person who gets to make that decision, and you can help them with that.
Yeah.
Because the fear is worse than anything. It's easier to be fired than deal with the fear.
Yeah, and it's a bad sign when you'd rather just lose the job than, actually, be able to have that conversation, stand up for what's right. And still, it's on one hand, you say, I'm not going to condone, how you treated me. And at the same time, I'm not doing this to, undercut anybody or make anyone look bad or embarrass anybody. I'm just here to be sure that, hey, if you want this relationship to work, then this is the feedback I need you to consider.
Well, someone has to be the grown-up.
Absolutely.
I mean, seriously, someone has to be the grown-up. And if it's on the employee or whoever, they have to do that.
Yeah.
Otherwise nothing is going to change. Everything depends on ourselves. Who we meet, who we talk to, how we react to things is all up to us. And you're able to help people face that without making them wrong. And I think that's empowering.
Yeah. Thanks.
Well, it's a good thing that you're doing, Jerry.
Yeah. Happy to see my clients succeed in that way, to the point where they don't need my help, so they can stand on their own 2 feet, for sure.
Yes. Go, butterfly, go.
Exactly.
So where can people find you, Jerry Fu?
Yeah. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, just like you did. And, but all the goodies that people want, that are free, are at the website, which is www.adaptingleaders.com. And so, as we mentioned earlier, there's a free guide you can download on the framework for handling hard conversations. You can schedule a complimentary 30-minute call if you want a little more personal attention to whatever situation you're working on. And there's also a blog where I summarize interesting and useful leadership books and also offer other life hacks. But if I had to specify one call to action for our listeners, it is, hey, get the free guide. It is the quickest way to see transformation in your life.
Thank you. But now, beyond the free guide that they're going to get, and I always tell my listeners, I usually tell my listeners about 99% of the time, re-listen to the podcast. Get a pen and a paper and take notes. So, Jerry's making it easy for you listeners to go and download this document that is going to give you 5 steps to help you set yourself free. But right now I'm going to ask Jerry one thing. If there was one thing you would tell our listeners now, what would it be?
Yeah, great question. And I don't want this to be cheesy, so I'm going to take a little time to think about my answer. Yeah. If I had to say one thing, just say, hey, whatever you decide today, it's your decision. Whether you choose to avoid or engage in a difficult conversation, whether you choose to book the vacation you've always wanted to take, or you decide to put it off again, it is your decision.
Yeah, it's up to you. Everyone listening, Jerry and myself as individuals, especially, everything we do is our decision, and we take responsibility for it, good, bad, or indifferent. I want to thank you for being here today, Jerry Fu. This is a great podcast, great information, and I hope everybody goes to your website at adaptingleaders.com. I don't think I need to spell it for everybody. Hey, you never know. Sometimes. Yeah,
you never know. Yeah, just Amazon one-click it, right? Just, hit the button. Don't worry about spelling it. We'll figure it out.
That's what I love about Amazon and Google. I can misspell every word in my question, and they figure it out for me.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you for being here today. This is great. So everybody just remember, this is Jerry Fu, who is a conflict resolution coach who helps Asian American leaders advance in their career and life journeys. Can't ask for anything better than that. Have a great day, Jerry Fu, and thank you, audience, for being here again. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Sanity Project podcast. Please go to AskJoanneVictoria.com to listen to more podcasts. Check out Joanne's coaching programs and get a free copy of her report, 5 Steps to Achieve Life-Work Harmony. That's AskJoanneVictoria.com. Take care, and thanks for being here.